ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। जय नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णहस्ताय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सर्वदेवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. All right. So because last Ekadashi was my, uh, I was supposed to speak last Ekadashi on the Gita Jayanti day, and but I think you are reciting the entire Bhagavad Gita. So that day I was not able to speak. So I just thought that I will share something about the glories of Bhagavad Gita, as in this context of concluding the essence of Bhagavad Gita, the what is actually the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. um, Decoding, we can actually decode the Bhagavad Gita and we can come to the conclusion that indeed Bhakti Yoga is actually the ultimate goal of Krishna's trying to convince Arjuna to fight the war. So it is not about Karma Yoga, it is not about Jnana, but it is actually, truly, it is Bhakti Yoga. And because a lot of people from the outside world, especially from the academics point of view also, they think that Srila Prabhupada has translated Bhagavad Gita according to his own understanding and conception. And Prabhupada has kind of turned and twisted everything in terms of Bhakti Yoga, in terms of devotional service to the Lord. So every aspect of the Bhagavad Gita, every aspect of the activity of the whatever Krishna is instructing Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, whatever options that Krishna is giving to Arjun, everything has been connected in relation with Bhakti Yoga, in spite of being separately addressing all these things. So they feel that Prabhupada has some bias towards Bhakti Yoga, and that's why he has wrong kind of misinterpreted the Bhagavad Gita, not exactly according to the way um, it is supposed to be. This is their understanding and their opinion. So, of course, there will be difference of opinions throughout the world, but we have to convey the message as it is also. And this is what Prabhupada exactly did. So we'll see how Prabhupada did that. And I would highly recommend to read His Holiness Shivaram Swami's book. He has written a book called The Bhaktivedanta Purports, in which he has very systematically presented and refuted all these arguments by the different professors in different parts of the world. So I have also compiled my notes from his book only, majorly from his book. Okay. So I will have to share the screen also. Is it okay if we don't take a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam? I actually forgot about it. I could not uh, I just forgot that we are starting with the Srimad Bhagavatam sloka. Uh, yeah, otherwise I could have just picked up a verse and then we could have started from there. But I just forgot because a lot of things were going on. Is that okay? Like we just directly start for the class and skip the Bhagavatam verse, or if you have any particular verse, then we can just go through it and we can also read the purport, and then we can start.
Yes, Prabhu, that is fine. We can discuss the topic, what you have. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So, yeah. So the first and foremost important point to establish the glories of Bhagavad Gita in the context of Bhakti Yoga as being the um, actual message of the Gita, um, we need to assume certain things. And it is very important to assume at the beginning that Bhagavad Gita is supposed to be the conclusion of the Vedic scriptures, or it is actually the ultimate scripture, the ultimate, or you can say the most authoritative scripture amongst the vast gamut of scriptures that we have in Sanatana Dharma or in Vedic scriptures that we have. It is necessary because if Srimad Bhagavad Gita is not the ultimate scripture, then where is the, why have to we come to the conclusion, or why we need to decode the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita? Because then if Bhagavad Gita is inferior to any other scripture, then that scripture becomes superior, and that superior scripture will probably convey some different idea. So then the value of Bhagavad Gita is no longer to be established, right? It's not needed. So let's assume even in the academic world also, they'll have to start with certain assumptions. Otherwise, there is no point of discussing about the supreme eminent position of the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, we know that according to Gaudiya Vaishnava scriptures, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the Amal Puran. It is the topmost authoritative scripture, and Bhagavad Gita is just a summary of the Srimad Bhagavatam. You can say like that, because Srimad Bhagavatam is a natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, right? And so Srimad Bhagavad Gita is also considered to be as Gita Upanishad, which is basically the culmination of the Upanishads. And it is like the example is given that Krishna is basically drawing the milk from the cow, right? And then Arjuna is the one who is actually going to take the milk. So this is how Bhagavad Gita has to be assumed as the most authoritative scripture. And then the arguments present in the Bhagavad Gita could be presented and it could be accepted also. So let's start with the point that, okay, does really the Bhagavad Gita talk about karma or jnana? Or does the Gita talk about different options apart from Bhakti Yoga? And what is the, even if the Bhagavad Gita is talking about karma, jnana, dhyana, then what is the relationship with Bhakti Yoga? In the sense that how does it connect with Bhakti Yoga? Because we will also try to prove that all these other different stages of yogas, all these different yogas, they are actually dependent on Bhakti Yoga for their goal also. So even if you are performing Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga as an independent entity, separate from Bhakti Yoga, but still in order to achieve the result of the goal of that particular path, you'll also have to incorporate the element of Bhakti to some extent in order to achieve the desired result. Without doing this, it is not possible to even get the results of all these other different paths. Okay, so all right, now let's start our confrontation or arguments. So see, karma, jnana, and dhyana. These are the three paths that Krishna is talking about. Primarily, these are the three paths that Krishna is talking about in the Bhagavad Gita. So, and all these three, they use the gross and the subtle body as instruments for liberation, right? So you can see that how, if you are performing some karma, then you'll have to engage your material body, material senses in doing some activity, and that's how it's a bodily concept. So whatever is connected to karma, it has to be done with our body, and we know that we are not the body with a spirit soul, right? Dehinosmin yatha deve komaram yovanam jara tatha detan prapti divas tatra namuyate. So the body keeps on changing, the soul remains the same, and we keep on taking different bodies at the time of death. So the body is out of fashion. It cannot be an eternal principle then, because body is temporary, it is going to go away. And from the Bhagavad Gita, we also know that the body is not just the gross body that we can see with our naked eyes, but it is also the subtle body. The subtle body also has got subtle senses along with its gross counterpart. So just like we see the gross body externally, but the subtle aspect of the gross body is also inside, and that is called subtle body, which with its subtle senses and all. So the karma, jnana, and now jnana also, you are basically trying to learn the truth with your intelligence, with your mind, right? And using some senses also, probably your eyes or your ears to hear knowledge. So these are all like you are basically engaging your karmendriyas and the jnanendriyas in order to follow the path of karma and jnana. As well as dhyana also, you need some focus, concentration, and you need your intelligence in order to focus your mind, to channelize it, right? So again, these are all parts of the material body, subtle bodies and the gross bodies, and that's why all these things are all temporary. Only element which is going to be permanent is your soul. And what is connected with the soul? It is definitely Bhakti Yoga. Because after going back to the spiritual world, we are only going to perform devotional service. We are not going to perform any other service, right? So it's, although we will use, because we'll have a spiritual body, so the activities of karma and jnana will be there. but this is not the same as material karma and jnana. This is actually spiritual activity and spiritual knowledge. So that knowledge and activity is always going to be part of bhakti yoga, and that's why you'll say that bhakti yoga includes the results of all the other parts of the karma, jnana, and dhyana as well. So whatever result that you achieve through karma, through jnana and dhyana, that is all simply achieved by bhakti yoga. Just by practicing bhakti yoga, you get the results of all the other parts. Now we'll also discuss what are the results that are going to be accomplished when we perform karma yoga, dhyana yoga, and jnana yoga. Right? So yeah. Now before that, even Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita 3.42, and let me share the screen also. So I'll be sharing the screen because there will be a lot of verses that I'll be sharing from directly from the Bhagavad Gita. I'm going to share it because we are here to prove that it is not the purport of Prabhupada, it is not the translation also, it is directly mentioned in the verse, in the sloka. So we'll not be going through the purports of Prabhupada, but we'll only be reading the sloka as in the translation. So you'll get a clear understanding that there is no biasness in whatever Srila Prabhupada presented in presenting his version of Bhagavad Gita as it is. Okay, so are you able to see on the screen the verse number? I mean the verse.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, all right. Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhya param mana manasastu para buddhir yo buddhe paratastuta tusa. So we'll just skip this. Okay, let's read the synonyms also for a clear understanding. Indriyani senses, parani superior, ahu are said, indriyebhya more than the senses, param superior, mana the mind, manasa more than the mind, tu also, para superior, buddhi intelligence, ya who, buddhe more than the intelligence, parata superior, to but, sa he. Translation. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And the soul is even higher than the intelligence. Right? So, see, this is a hierarchy of uh, how the soul is superior to the subtle and the gross body. And the working senses are superior to dull matter. So, we know that uh, the dull matter is inferior to everything because it does not have consciousness, and it is also um, inactive by nature. Okay, unless we use it, then it can become active, but otherwise it's all inactive. So in that sense, the working senses, which are also, if there is no consciousness in the body, then the working senses also will become dull matter. But because the consciousness is present in the body, the working senses become superior to the dull matter. And then mind is higher than the intelligence, than the senses, right? Because we see that mind is the instrument and medium through which the senses are to be engaged, right? And if we cannot control the mind, it becomes our enemy. And if it is controlled, then it is the best friend of, like, it can become the best friend. So we see that mind is superior to the senses. And then intelligence is still higher than the mind, because through intelligence we can actually direct, channelize the mind. In which way? The I got disconnected. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. Share the screen. Okay, the sharing is not turned on. The host has to enable multiple sharing. Wi-Fi. Hare Krishna. Okay, I think there is some issue with the Wi-Fi connection. So maybe let me try connecting it with my phone data network. Hopefully it can work out. Okay, Hare Krishna. So I have switched to my phone's mobile data. I would request some host to enable the sharing of screen.
Yes, so once again. Prabhu, if you have a of the video also, that might help. I think I'm no longer the host, so Samaneska Mataji, can you
Or
make
if you
Prabhuji
can
host?
make me the host.
Oh, yes, Prabhuji, just a minute.
I can try. You can just click on Prabhuji's name, then that will make him host. Let me try. Yes, Prabhuji, you are the host now.
Okay. Yes. All right. Yeah. So the intelligence is superior to the mind, and then the soul is superior to the intelligence, because the soul is the ultimate consciousness, and because the consciousness is there, all the other elements, they are kind of activated. Without the soul, without the consciousness, there is no question of the, then all of these elements will become dull matter. So this is directly stated by Krishna himself, and through this verse from the Bhagavad Gita directly, we can also infer that this is the reason why Bhakti Yoga is actually highest amongst the different types of yoga. Correct? Because Bhakti Yoga is directly connected to the Atma. It is, of course, we also make use of the body, but even after the subtle and the gross body, they are no longer present along with the soul. The soul continues to live in the spiritual world, and then it will also have activity in the spiritual world. So that way, and another important thing is that um, ultimately all these senses, so they give pleasure to the Atma, and that pleasure of Atma is actually supposed to be eternal. Sachidananda Swarup of the Atma is already established in the Upanishads. So, by what means can it be eternal? It can only be eternally happy if there is something, if there is a source of happiness which is eternal, and that is only possible using some eternal source which is not connected to the body at all. So that way we can understand that how Bhakti Yoga is also superior to all these different parts of karma, jnana, and dhyana. Right? Okay, so next point. Now, what is the result that you attain by following the path of karma, jnana, and dhyana? So let's try to see what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita regarding this. So let's go to verse number 19 of the third chapter. Third chapter is basically about karma yoga. So, okay. Tasmad asakta satatam karyam karma samachara asakto hi acharan karma param apnoti purusha. Tasmat, therefore, asakta, without attachment, satatam, constantly, karyam, as duty, karma, work, samachar, perform, asakta, unattached. He certainly, acharan, performing, karm, work, param, the supreme, apnoti, achieves. Purusha, a man. Translation: therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. So this is one verse that we are taking into account. And oh, are you able to see the screen, the verse? And
Yes, we can see.
okay, so this is one verse. Now we will go to another verse, which is verse number 31. ये मे मतम इदम नित्यम अनुतिष्ठन्ति मानव श्रद्धावन्तो न श्रूयन्तो मुच्यन्ते अपि कर्मभिः. Ye, those who, me, my, matam, injunctions, idam, these, nityam, as an eternal function, anu, tishtanti, execute regularly, manava, human beings, shraddhavanta, with faith and devotion, anasuyanta, without envy, muchante, become free, te, all of them, api, even, karmabhi, from the bondage of the law of fruitive actions. So see, in verse number 19, we saw that Krishna is talking about attaining the supreme. Now, what exactly is attaining the supreme? He is actually answering in this particular verse, which is verse number 31. And he's saying the attaining the supreme, which basically means that we get free from the bondage of the law of fruitive actions. So basically, whenever you are doing some karma, we get some reaction for it. Like Newton's law, third law of motion. To every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. So when we are doing karma, pious activities, if we do, we get pious reaction, or we get to enjoy, right? And if we do impious activities, then we suffer for it. So now, when we are doing karma without attachment, then that will free us from these fruitive actions or the results of work. So this is what it means that karma without attachment can.
They are being
So whenever we are doing karma without attachment, then it can bestow the result of freedom from fruitive results, right? This is the result of karma yoga, path of karma yoga. Now, what is the path? What is the goal that we achieve by practicing the path of Jnana Yoga? So we'll see the verse number 18.54, because Jnana is described in the last 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. All right. So very popular verse also. Brahmabhuta prasannatma na sochiti na kamsati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. Brahmabhuta, being one with the absolute, prasannatma, fully joyful, na, never, sochiti, laments, na, never, kankshati, desires, sama, equally disposed, sarveshu, to all, bhuteshu, living entities, mad bhaktim, my devotional service, labate, gains, param, transcendental. One who is thus transcendental situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So see, here it is clearly mentioned that someone following the path of Jnana will achieve the realization of Brahman, which means that he will identify himself one as Brahman and he will see everything as one. So that is the result of following the path of Jnana Yoga. And now coming to the path of Dhyana Yoga. So let's go to verse number 6.28 and 6.29, because this is the chapter that talks about Dhyana Yoga. All right. Yunjaneva sadatmanam yogi vigata kalmasa sukhena brahma samsparsham atyantam sukha asnute. Yunjan, engaging in yoga practice, evam, thus sada, always, atmanam, the self, yogi, one who is in touch with the supreme self, vigata, freed from kalmasha, all material contamination, sukhena, in transcendental happiness, Brahma samsparsham, being in constant touch with the Supreme. Atyantam, the highest. Sukham, happiness. Asnute, attains. Thus, the self-controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord. Now, the original sloka does not actually mention about bhakti or devotional service in this verse, but Srila Prabhupada is translating it like that. So let that you can forget that. You can forget this transcendental loving service to the Lord for the time being. But what it says is that they achieve the highest stage of perfect happiness. Basically, they are in touch with the Supreme. This is what it says. Brahma samsparsham, being in constant touch with the Supreme. This is what we need to remember. Okay, so now the one who is following the path of dhyana, at the most he can actually kind of be in touch with the Supreme. And Srila Prabhupada is not wrong in his translation, because in one sense, what is meant by being in touch with the Paramatma? So it basically means that at least you start having some kind of awe and reverence for the Lord, the presence of the Lord. Okay, and you see the Lord everywhere. At the same time, you may establish that constant touch with the Lord, or you may also, if you desire, you may also merge with the body of the Lord, because this is the goal of the followers of Patanjali. So they are dhyan yogis, like for example Ramdev Baba. So all these Patanjali followers, they focus a lot on dhyana, on austerities, meditation and all. They are kind of ascetic also to some degree, but their entire goal is to focus on the Supreme, on the Paramatma, and if they want, they can also merge in the Paramatma, right? So these are the different results that you achieve by following these different paths. Now, what does Bhakti award? So Bhakti will award everything, because we know that in the spiritual world, we will be eternally established as the servant of the Lord, will serve the Lord. And while serving the Lord, we get all these realizations that we are getting from all these other paths. Freedom from the fruitive activities, of course, because we are no longer subjected to karma. Jnana means to realize the Brahman and to identify that we are part and parcel of Brahman. I mean, one with the Brahman. So in that sense, the devotees also realize that they are also one with the Lord, because they are the same quality, not in terms of quantity. So that result is also obtained. And then in Dhyan, they are constantly in touch with the Supreme. Not just that, but beyond that, they are also rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. So there's also activity involved. So this is how you see that Bhakti awards the results of all these paths, but also beyond that. All right, next point. Now, this is a very important point, because the question can be that, are these other paths, are they independent from Bhakti? Are they like, do they require some other element to achieve their goals, or are they completely independent? And in order to prove the superiority of Bhakti, in order to gain the results of all these paths, that's why you'll see that consistently Krishna has been talking about, although he's describing karma, jnana, dhyana, but at the end of the verses or somewhere in the chapter, he does mention that, engage everything in my service. So like if it is karma, he'll say that engage everything in my service. And if it is jnana, he'll say that use the knowledge to understand me. Okay. And then finally for dhyana, he says that focus your mind on me. So actually everything is linked up to bhakti. And in fact, these are all stages on a ladder. So from karma, one may lead to gyan, gyan leads to dhyan, and then finally dhyan can lead to bhakti. So it all depends on whether we would like to progress, or we would like to move forward and take one step ahead, or we would like to stuck at that particular step and are satisfied with that. So it all depends on the individual's choice. But let's try to establish how karma, jnana, dhyana, they are all completely dependent on bhakti. Okay. So let's go to verse number 3.9. Let's start with Karma Yoga. See, these are all self-evident slokas in the Bhagavad Gita, that does not require any kind of interpretation, and it is how, like, very easily understood, kind of self-evident, that just by reading these verses you can actually understand, anyone can understand that actually Krishna is, um, he is emphasizing and he is also concluding that ultimately he wants uh, Arjun to render devotional service to him. That is the ultimate goal. Another thing I forgot to mention in the beginning is that the Bhagavad Gita also very clearly states the qualification for devotional service to the Lord. And what is that the qualification? So let me go to that. I just forgot that. So verse number 4.3, transcendental knowledge will establish that. So this is actually the most important qualification for anyone who wants to understand Bhagavad Gita and also translate and interpret Bhagavad Gita. Okay. So what does Krishna establish here very clearly? 4.3, verse number 4.3. Sa evayam mayatedya yoga prokta puratana bhakto si me sakha cheti rahasyam hi etad uttamam. Synonyms. So the same. Eva, certainly, I am this, maya, by me, te, unto you, adya, today, yoga, the science of yoga, prokta, spoken, puratana, very old, bhakta, devotee, asi, you are, me, my sakha, friend, cha, also, iti, therefore, rahasyam, mystery, he, certainly, etad, this, uttamam, transcendental. Translation, that very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. So see, Krishna is very clearly stating who can understand this transcendental mystery of science: someone who is my devotee or someone who is my friend. Very clearly established. So now someone is not a devotee of the Lord, then they cannot actually interpret the Bhagavad Gita. So right at the beginning, this qualification is established, and I mean, it's not even worth to actually argue about, whether the goal of bhakti, what the goal of Bhagavad Gita is bhakti or not, because this is the thing. Krishna is saying that this can only be understood by someone who is my devotee, and the verse actually states the word bhakto si mein sakha cheti, sakha and bhakto, right? So there, like that, there are many verses in the Bhagavad Gita that has directly the word bhakti, like bhaktya mami janati yavaneshati tatmata, and then so who can understand the knowledge of Gita? Bhaktya mami janati, only by rendering devotional service to me. And then there is another verse also which talks about that. So this is how we actually can clearly understand that only through Bhakti Yoga we can understand the Bhagavad Gita. All right, so let's go to karma. Now we are in the process of establishing that how all these other different paths, they are dependent on bhakti in order to achieve their results. Yagnarthat karmana anyatra lokayam karma bandhana tad artham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Yagnarthat, done only for the sake of Yagya or Vishnu. Karmana, then work. Anyatra, otherwise, Loka, world. I am this. Karma bandhana, bondage by work. Tat, of him. Artham, for the sake. Karma, work. Kunte, O son of Kunti. Mukta Sangha, liberated from association. Samachara, do perfectly. So work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has been to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. And in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. Now, see, it is very clear here that work which is done as a sacrifice of Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, it will cause bondage in the material world. It's not that, okay, you are doing some work and you are detached from the activity. That work also will, if you do not worship Vishnu, if you don't offer that activity to Vishnu, then it becomes a material activity, because ultimately you may be detached, but you cannot be free from the desire to to work in the future, and because you have that desire, that's why you'll have to take another body. But when you offer your results to the Lord, then only the Lord will destroy the bondage which is caused due to the work itself. So that way you'll stop repeated birth and death, and you can go to the abode of the Lord. But so that's why it is very clearly stated that work will cause bondage in the material world. And that's why the prescribed duty should be performed for his satisfaction. Now, another question here may be that yajna, why is it translated as Vishnu? Yajna can also mean normal yajna, like it has to be done as a sacrifice, right? But the question is that sacrifice for whom? We talk about, like impersonalists may talk about sacrifice being done, but then they may also talk about yajnas, like for example, the fire yajna. But then ultimately, what is that fire yajna? Who is represented by that fire yajna? Fire yajna, the yajna is impersonal. Yajna does not have any consciousness. The yajna cannot bestow results in itself. So who is bestowing the result? Now, so basically the yajna is representing some entity. It is, like when it is representing some supreme controller or power, the absolute truth, then the yajna has some prominence. But yajna in itself cannot bestow any result. It cannot also control one's karma. So it is very clear that yajna has to refer to some entity which is going to award that, which will basically free us from the bondage of fruited activities. So by that we can also refute the impersonalist argument or the arguments by the different professors. All right, next let's go to, there are so many verses like that. We'll go to all of them one by one. Okay, so verse number 3.30. मायि सर्वाणि कर्माणि संन्यास आध्यात्म चेतसा निराशे निर्ममो भूत्वा युध्यस्व विगत ज्वर. Mayi, and to me, sarvani, all sorts of karmani, activities, sannyasya, giving up completely, adhyatma, with full knowledge of the self, chetasa, by consciousness, nirashi, without desire for profit, nirmama, without ownership, bhutva, so being, yudhyasva, fight, vigata jvara, without being lethargic. Translation: O therefore, Arjun, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. Right? So see, here also, now the impersonalists sometimes say that the meaning of Mayi is that the Brahman which is within me, because I'm ultimately the absolute truth is Brahman. Everything is one, and I'm just representing that Brahman. So the Brahman which is within me, this is what Mayi is. But then this is not the right usage of terms in the Sanskrit language. It cannot be interpreted like that. It is basically a word jugglery. And the real understanding, the real interpretation of that particular word is actually given by our acharyas. So Srila Baldev Bhushan, Jiva Goswami, and all the Vaishnava acharyas like Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya. So they are the ones who are actually properly defining the meaning of the word Mayi. And of course, even a reader also can easily understand that Mai means me, because what exactly, even let's assume that even if that is the Brahman within us, but then what is that Brahman? Now, why does Brahman want all the activities of the individual living entities to surrender to him? If so, basically, see, the first aspect is that Brahman is completely non-dual. It does not have any desire at all. It is totally inert. It is all pervading. It is inert. So when there is no consciousness in the Brahman, it's all one. There is no duality. So then, who is that Brahman? And why does he ask to surrender? It all does not make sense. So these are all word juggleries. So this is clearly Krishna is saying, and Prabhupada also said that many times, that when Krishna is saying that Sarva Dharma Parityaja Mamekam Saranam, surrender to me, they are saying that it is not unto him, it is unto the Brahman. Right? So all for wherever Krishna is directly saying, and then you also minimize the position of Krishna because you are bringing him down to the level of Brahman. I mean, there's no point of Krishna speaking the Bhagavad Gita, it's all like one, right? So overall it does not make sense. Now let's go to next verse, verse number 5.10. ब्रह्मणि आदाय कर्माणि संगम त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते न स पापेन पद्मपत्रम इवं भषा. Brahmani, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, adaya, resigning, karmani, all works, sangam, attachment, taktva, giving up, karoti, performs, ya, who, lipyate, is affected, na, never, sa, he, papena, by sin, padma patram, a lotus leaf, iva, like ambasa, by the water. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. So surrendering unto the results unto the Brahmani Adaya Karmani. So offering of the results unto the Brahman. So now sometimes Supreme God is also referred to as Brahman. So the ultimate Brahman is the Supreme Lord, like that. He is also referred to in the scriptures. Okay, so let's continue with the next verse. 5.29. Bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suvardan sarvabhutanam yatmam shanti rakshati. Bhoktaram, the beneficiary yagya of sacrifices, tapasam, and penances and austerities, sarvaloka of all planets and the demigods thereof, Maha Ishwaram, the Supreme Lord, Suvardam, the benefactor, Sarva of all, Bhutanam, the living entities, Gyatva, thus knowing, Mam, me, Shantim, relief from material pangs, Rakshati, one achieves. See, when you say me, like for example, we understand that when the slok talks about Brahman directly, right? Then we may have a doubt whether Krishna is talking about himself or when he's talking about Brahmani, the Brahman. But here there are so many verses where Krishna is directly saying Mam, Mai, like that. So why he is using specifically the word Mam or me, Mai, like that. So that also indicates that there is some difference which needs to be established. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of living entities, attain peace from pangs of material miseries. So he who believes that Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities attains peace, right? So this is another verse. Next verse will be okay, third chapter itself. Third chapter, verse number 31 and 32. ये मे मतम विदम नित्यम अनुतिष्ठन्ति मानवा श्रद्धावन्तो न श्रूयन्तो मुच्यन्ते अपि कर्मभिः. Ye, those who me my matam injunctions idam these nityam as eternal fire. I think we already read this verse. Anutishtanti, execute regularly, manava, human beings, shraddhavanta, with faith and devotion, anasuyanta, without envy, muchante, become free. I think we read this verse. So those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and will follow this teaching faithfully, without envy, become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. So see, here Krishna is saying that those persons who will execute their duties according to my injunctions. Ye me matam idam. That is also very clearly stated, very personal. It is not, Brahman is saying something like that. No. Ye me matam idam. This is my mat. This is my opinion. According to my injunctions and following me will become free. So the next verse will also elaborate on this further. Ye tva etad abhyasuyanto nanutishtanti me matam sarva jnana vimurdham stan vidhi nashtan achetasa. Ye, those who, however, itat this abhyasuyanta out of envy, na, do not, anutistanti, regularly perform, me, my, matam, intention, sarva gyan, in all sorts of knowledge, vimudhan, perfectly befooled, tan, they are, vidhi, know it well, nashtan, all ruined, achetasa, without Krishna consciousness. Translation. So, but those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. Right? So here it confirms that those who do not follow the injunctions of the Lord, even though they may be performing work and they may be detached, but if they are not offering the results to the Lord, then they will surely fall down. They will not become free from the bondage of fruitive activities. Okay. So with this, we can clearly understand that how karma is also dependent on bhakti, because without performing some kind of connection with the Lord in karma, you cannot actually get the result of karma also, right? Because uh, we have already come to the conclusion that karma awards freedom from fruitive karma without attachment, but that has to be connected with the Lord. Now we'll see the same thing about jnana. So let's go to 7.17. तेषां ज्ञानि नित्ययुक्त एकभक्ति विशिष्यते प्रिय हि ज्ञानिनो अर्थम अहम स च मम प्रिय. Tesam, out of them, Jnani, one in full knowledge, Nitya Yukta, always engaged, Eka, only, Bhakti in devotional service. Shishyate is special. Priya, very dear, he certainly, Jnanina, to the person in knowledge. Atyartham, highly, Aham, I am, Sa, he, Cha, also, Mama, to me, Priya, dear. Of these, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best. For I am very dear to him and he is dear to me. So see, here specifically Krishna is using the word Eka Bhakti Vishishyate. That's why there is nothing wrong in considering as pure devotional service here. Okay, so we'll go to next verse, 18. Udara sarva evaite jnanitva atmaiva me matam Asthita sahi tatma mam evan nu tamam gatim. Udara, magnanimous, survey all, eva certainly, these, jnani, one who is in knowledge, too, but atma eva, just like myself, me, my matam, opinion, asthita, situated, so he, certainly, yukta atma, engaged in devotional service, mam, in me, eva certainly, Anutamam, the highest, Gatim, destination. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but one who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. Again, Krishna is actually establishing that who among the Gyanis is actually the best type of Gyani. And who is very dear to him is the one who is also um, kind of engaged in transcendental service to the Lord. Right now, finally, this 19th verse will actually establish the dependence of Gyan on Bhakti. And this is a very popular verse. Bhavunam janmanamante jnanavamam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samatma sudurlabha. So Bahunam, many, Janmanam, repeated births and deaths, Ante after, Jnanavan, one who is in full knowledge, Mam, unto me, Prapadyate surrenders, Vasudev, the personality of Godhead, Krishna, Sarvam, everything, Iti thus, so that Maha Atma, great soul, Su Durlabha, very rare to see. So see, this is a very important verse for all of us because it clearly refutes and establishes the preeminence of Bhakti Yoga or Jnana. And this is also self-evident verse in the sense that unless and until you um, try to understand the Lord and you perform service to the Lord, you cannot really attain liberation through Jnana. Because we have already discussed that how Jnana leads to the goal of Jnana or the result which is achieved by Jnana Yoga is to realize the Brahman or to identify oneself one with the Brahman, right? But even this goal cannot be achieved unless and until one can understand that Vasudeva is Sarvamiti. That's why Krishna is saying Bhavunam and Janmanam Ante. Now, what does that mean? Even Jnanavan ma prapaddate, even the one who is in full knowledge. So, the meaning of this sloka is that even if one with full knowledge, even if one has full knowledge, but he has to take repeated birth unless he comes to the understanding that Vasudevam Sarvamiti, that uh, it's the Supreme Lord. He's the goal of everything, and he's the result of everything. So now it is not stated that Sarvam Vasudeva iti. Okay, if it was stated like that, then we could have understood that it was referring to the Brahman aspect of the absolute feature. But purposefully it is mentioned like this, Vasudevam Sarvamiti, that the goal of everything is Vasudev. And one who does not realize this will actually take repeated birth and death. Now, what kind of Jnani will take repeated birth and death? Even those who have full knowledge. So Jnanavan, one who is in full knowledge. Okay, so this is how we can clearly see that if through Jnana you do not try to link up with the Lord and you do not try to understand the Lord, then Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. And then what he also says, that surrenders, not only that, but surrenders unto me, knowing me to the cause of all causes. Such a great soul is very rare. So this very clearly establishes the independence of bhakti as well as, the dependence of Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. So see, now the question is that, all right, we have established that Jnana and karma. Okay, let us come to that later on, when we also establish the dhyan aspect is dependent on bhakti. Okay, so this is going to be 6.13. Okay. Samam kaya shirogrivam dharayan achalam sthira sampreksha nasika gram swam disash chanavalokayan ashanatma vikata bhir brahmachari vrate sthita mana samyamya machchitto yukta asita matpara. Samam, straight, kaya, body, shira, head, grivam, and neck, dharayan, holding, achalam, unmoving, sthira, still, sampreksha, looking, nasika, of the nose, agram at the tip, swam, on, disha on all sides, cha also, anvalokayan, not looking, prashanta, unagitated, atma, mind, vigata, be devoid of fear, brahmachari vrate, in the vow of celibacy, sthita, situated, mana, mind, samyamya, completely subduing, mat, upon me, Krishna, chitta, concentrating the mind, yukta, the actual yogi, asita, should sit, mat, me, para, the ultimate goal. One should hold one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. So, this is also very clearly stated in the verse itself. There is no question of misinterpretation, because here it is mentioned that mat me para, make me the ultimate goal, and then also focus your mind upon me. right? Matta. So that is very clearly stated here. So this is the verse that actually establishes that one has to, while making, while cultivating the path of Dhyana Yoga, one has to make the Lord the object of meditation. Next verse is verse number 15. Okay. Yunjan eva sadatmanam yoga nitya manasa shantim nirvana paramam mat samstam adhigacchati. Yunjan, practicing evam as mentioned above, sada, constantly, atmanam, body, mind and soul. Yogi, the mystic transcendentalist, niyat manasa, with regulated mind. Shantim, peace. Nirvana paramam, cessation of material existence. Mad samstam, the spiritual sky, the kingdom of God. Adi gachati, does attain. Thus, practicing constant control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist is mind regulated, attains to the kingdom of God or the abode of Krishna by cessation of material existence. Okay, next verse will be 6.46 and 7. तपस्विभ्यो अधिको योगी ज्ञानिभ्यो अपि मतोऽधिक कर्मिभ्यश्च अधिको योगी तस्माद् योगी भव Arjuna. Tapasvibhya, then the ascetics. Adhika, greater. Yogi, the yogi. Jnanibhya, then the wise. Api, also. Matta, consider. Adhik, greater. Karmibhya, then the fruitive workers. Cha, also. Adhik, greater. Yogi, the yogi. Tasmat, therefore. Yogi, a transcendentalist. Bhava, just become Arjun. O Arjuna. Translation: a yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances be a yogi. Now see, this verse also clearly defines the hierarchy of the different paths. So now, yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist. Empiricist is the one who is actually um, who wants to experiment things and who wants to find out the truth using experiments. Ascetic is the one who will follow some kind of vows, will try to kind of like, for example, celibacy or some regulative principles in order to avoid any kind of physical pleasure. And then fruitive worker is the one who is actually going to be working for some cause and he is expecting some result. So it is very clearly mentioned that the empiricist is greater than the fruitive worker because, so basically the empiricist is like a jnani, because jnani is the one who is trying to attain knowledge, who is trying to experiment things. And then ascetic is greater than the empiricist because ascetic is basically the one who is very advanced in his control of senses, regulated lifestyle and all that. So that is Dhyana Yoga. Now, who is this yogi that is referred? So this yogi is actually, it cannot be anything other than uh, the Bhakti yogi, because all these other paths are already described. So what is left out is only Bhakti. So that's why this yogi is actually referred to as Bhakti yogi. Now we'll see the most important and the popular verse. Yoginam api sarvesham madgantaratmana shraddhamam bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mata. Yoginam, of yogis, api, also, sarvesham, all types of, madgatena, abiding in me, always thinking of me, anta atmana, within himself, shraddhavan, in full faith, bhajate, renders transcendental loving service, ya, one who, mam, to me, the Supreme Lord, sa, he, me, may, by me, yuktatama, the greatest yogi, mata, is considered. And of all the yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, renders transcendental loving service to me, is the more intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So we can clearly see that Bhakti Yoga is definitely the topmost amongst all the different types of yoga. And at the same time, how Dhyana Yoga, because every place, each and everywhere, whenever the Lord is talking about Dhyana, he's basically asking Arjun to any practitioner to focus his mind on him. And this is the only way actually one can attain the result of dhyana, by being in touch with the Supreme. And that's why Dhyana Yoga is also ultimately dependent on Bhakti. And ultimately, the Lord establishes for any other path, whether it can be Dhyan, Karma, Gyan, or any other path that we have, Karma Mimamsa, maybe Karma Mimamsa of Jaimin Rishi, which are all kind of subsets of these three paths. So all these other different paths, they have to surrender to the Lord only. That's why he also establishes this in the 4th chapter of the 11th verse. And what does he say? This is also another very popular verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Transcendental knowledge. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sthaiva bhajamiham mam vartamanu vartante manushya partha sarvasa. So what does Krishna say? That ye all who yatha as mam unto me prapadyante surrender, tan them tatha so eva certainly bhajami reward aham I mama my vartama path anuvartante follow manushya all men path O son of Pritha sarvasha in all respects. So all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. So now from this verse, it is very clear that whichever path you follow in the material world, ultimately it is Krishna's path only. And because you follow Krishna's path, that's why you gain some result. Otherwise, it is not possible to gain anything, right? So, and indirectly, you have to surrender to the Lord. Now, why does one has to surrender to the Lord? Because you cannot get the result without surrendering to the Lord. See, the thing is that why are we controlling the material world? We are controlled because there is a supreme controller. And unless we submit to his will, we will not get the result of the activity. So he's the controller, he's the giver of the results. And that's why we need to prapadya, to surrender to him. So basically, Krishna is saying that ultimately everyone depends on me for attaining their paths, the goal of their paths. Right? So very clear meaning from this. Okay, now we were talking about bhakti is independent, bhakti path being independent. So now see, by the verse Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma Nasotsati Nakamshati, one can clearly understand that bhakti, so these are all influenced by the modes of material nature, jnana, karma, dhyan. But bhakti is the only path which is transcendental to the modes of material nature. And this is what is established by the Lord clearly when he speaks about Bhaktyamam Vijanati, and then he also talks about Brahmavutta Prashanatma Nasotsati Nakamshati. Because after one, like, let's go to that verse. You'll have some proper understanding of that. Okay, Brahmruta Prashanatma Nasotsti Akamshti Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. So one who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed towards every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service. So see, Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. Param is transcendental. And in that state, he attains pure devotional service. So it means that Bhakti is beyond the modes of material nature. Bhakti is transcendental. Because after one realizes the Brahman, one actually can perform devotional service to the Lord. So Bhakti cannot be in the modes of material nature. It has to be beyond that. Now the entire purpose of the Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken to Arjuna, is he was basically completely bewildered and he wanted to get out of his illusion. Now what is the meaning of illusion? Illusion means that you are actually influenced by the modes of material nature. So the entire goal of Bhagavad Gita is to narrate, is that so to convince Arjun to come to a transcendental platform. And only bhakti, by it's only possible to attain that transcendental platform by come into Bhakti Yoga, because all these other paths, they are still in the different modes of material nature. So unless you connect them with the Lord, they will not give the result, and that's why they will always be in the influenced by the modes of material nature. They will not be transcendental. So like that we can understand. So this is how Bhakti is also independent. Bhakti cannot be. So nowhere in the Bhagavad Gita it is stated that Bhakti needs any different element for it to give it the result. Okay. Bhakti is completely dependent. And then Krishna says repeatedly that it's only through devotional service and only through bhakti that one can understand me as I am. Right? And he does not say that, okay, for like even when you are performing Bhakti Yoga, you need some different support of some other element. And then when we go and when we observe the 9th chapter, now what is the topic of 9th chapter? The most confidential knowledge. So that is revealed in the 9th chapter. And then what does that most confidential chapter include? So you go through the chapter and you see what are these verses. So like for example, let's go to verse number 14. Very straightforward conclusion. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhridavrata namasyantacha mam daktya nityayukta upasate. Right? Very clear understanding. Directly from the verse we can understand. It's all directly connected to Krishna's glorification. Then verse number 22. Ananyashchintayanto mam ye jana parupashate tesham taibiyuktanam yogashemam vahamiyam. Right? Then let's go to another verse. Verse number 11. Avajananti mamudha manusintam ashritam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Very important verse. It clearly refutes the impersonalist idea that the Lord has a material body. I mean, he's got a material body when you come to the material world. So what that does the Lord say in this verse? He says that fools deride me when I descend in the human form. So this is very clear. Avajananti mam mudha. So someone who considers me as manushim, ordinary human being, is mudha, fool. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme of all that be. Param bhavam ajananto. So here itself the Lord has clearly refuted all these ideas in this verse. Mama bhuta maheshwaram. Param bhavam. He is beyond all these things. It's transcendental. Then let's go to verse number 25. So worship of demigod also refuted. Yanti dev vrata devan pitra yanti pita vrata bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti mad yagino pimam. So those who worship the demigods take birth among demigods. Those who worship ancestor go to ancestor. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take about among beings, and those who worship me will live with me. Very clearly, the concept of duality has been presented, that there are multiple personalities, and it's not that all paths will lead to the same goal. At the same time, there is also the individuality of the demigods and the different destinations that you attain. So this is also very clearly mentioned in the most confidential chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Then next is verse number 26. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tad aham bhakti uparitam asnami prayadatmana. So it is a very clear verse that one offers fruit or leaf or water to me, then the Lord is going to accept it. Who is going to offer it to Brahman, right? This is not possible. The Lord is not going to reciprocate like that. So this is also there. Then all these most important verses of the Bhagavad Gita, they are all in the 9th chapter, and it all talks about bhakti. Then the verse number 26. Yat karoshi yat asnasi yat josi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva mad arpanam. Everything, whatever you do, whatever activity, whatever you eat, whatever you think of, everything you have to offer it to me. Also very clearly stated. Then verse number 34. Manmana bhav madbhakto madhyajimam namaskuru mameva shanti yuktevam atmanam matparayana. So similarly, there's another verse also which says Manmana bhav madbhakto madhyajimam namaskuru mameva shanti satyam te pratijana priyosime. So again, the Lord is saying like that. So always engage your mind in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisance to me and worship me, be absorbed in me. Surely it will come to me. So now it is all established that it's a hierarchy of yoga. Ultimately, it leads to bhakti yoga, and then um, these other parts are dependent on bhakti for their goals. Bhakti is independent, and bhakti yoga is the supreme. And the the Gita has to conclude. It concludes with that understanding. It concludes uh, by stating that bhakti yoga is actually the goal of the entire Bhagavad Gita. The entire purpose is to um, inspire Arjun to become his unalloyed devotee and to render service to him, to basically follow his instructions, to surrender to his instruction, to his will. So, what is the reason that all these other yogas are mentioned? It is basically to connect to different categories of people in order to bring them gradually to bhakti. Because as I stated earlier, these chapters, which has got the independent chapters, so-called independent chapters of karma, jnana, and dhyana. Ultimately, in those chapters, Krishna has also linked everything to bhakti as well as to perform rendering devotional service to him. So basically, this yoga ladder is not an alternative for bhakti. Rather, it is a ladder in itself, which leads one to bhakti. So one cannot think that, okay, if I don't want to render bhakti, then I will just follow the path of karma jnana and I will attain the result. No, this is not an alternative path. It is meant to bring us to different levels of consciousness, to elevate our consciousness gradually. The element, now see, another point, interesting point is, um, the element for karma is work, right? The purpose of karma is to work. Jnana is to attain knowledge and renunciation, and then dhyana is meditation. But bhakti will include everything, as we have already discussed earlier. And then karma, jnana, dhyana, they are all material and temporary. After attaining self-realization, they do not exist. This is also very important. Even if you consider the liberation from the point of view of the impersonalist, which is merging in Brahman or identifying oneself with the Brahman, then also you'll see that karma does not exist, jnana does not exist, right? But when you follow the path of bhakti, bhakti is eternal. Whereas karma, jnana, and dhyan, they cannot exist. You cannot meditate on something else because there is no duality. Everything is one. So what are you going to meditate on? So dhyan also does not exist. It's just that you are conscious of being. You know what is actually exactly the state of Brahman? That you only realize that you are a conscious being. That's it. Nothing else. And like no, there's no other thought than that, because then it will become a duality. So it does not make sense to say that um, bhakti is inferior to any of these other paths, and even the result which is achieved by all these paths, they ultimately they give up the paths themselves. It does not continue further. But bhakti is the only path that will also continue further. And similarly, you can also see um, that um, it's a very important question you can ask to these people, that who is going to think of liberation? See, if you are able to live an eternal, youthful life. Let's say you are not going to die, and you get an eternal body, eternally youthful body, and you do not die, and there is no suffering at all. Now, would you choose the path of activity? Like, because when you have an eternal youthful body which is not going to die, there is no disease, there is no suffering. So, would you not enjoy with that body rather than to completely isolate yourself and merge with the Brahman? So, the question of liberation coming up, I mean, it does not even come up for someone who is enjoying in the material world. Like, we know that we have come to Krishna consciousness because we have experienced suffering, and then we started questioning that why are we suffering? Who are we? Why are we in the material world? And even if we are not suffering, if we are enjoying, but someone else is suffering, we can see that. So at least that will trigger our mind to ask this question, that why people are suffering, right? But if suffering only is not there, then who is going to think about self-realization? So this very easily uh, establishes that liberation is just a byproduct of your desires. It is not actually something which is eternal. I mean, it is not something that is the highest principle. The highest factor is basically devotional service, because we can see in the material itself that when we are given this opportunity to have a very beautiful body, then who is going to think of liberation? I mean, we are already liberated because we are going to enjoy it eternally, right? So to think about, like, what is this merging in Brahman means, or identifying yourself as one. Like, for example, if you're totally isolated from everything in this material world, you are in a desert and you are disconnected from all types of communications, all types of relations, and you are single, alone. This is what is Brahman effulgence, merging in Brahman, or you can say considering yourself as Brahman. This is what it is. This is the experience. Or you can say a very simple analogy is that basically it's a state of dreamless sleep. So you go into sleep and you don't have any dreams, and you don't know what's happening at all. Totally blank. You're just sleeping. So this is actually like the state of Brahman. Now, who is going to want that? If we have a very beautiful body, enjoyable body, eternal body, youthful body, then nobody is thinking. So one can clearly come to the conclusion that how it's the real process, the real path is actually ultimately bhakti. So see, Arjuna is going to be, he was bewildered, and then the dilemma was there because of his bodily conception. He was identified in terms of body, and because uh, his association with the modes of material nature. And then Krishna provides a solution in the 14th chapter. Also, he says, of course, Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma, and then one more verse it says, Mam cho vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevata sagunan sabhityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So let us see that verse also in the 14th chapter, verse number 26. This also shows how bhakti is independent. Mam choya vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan sabhityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So one who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the mode of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Bhakti Yogena Sevate. Right? So one engaged in full devotional friendly, one at once transcends the modes of material nature and comes to the level of Brahman. This also shows how Bhakti is independent and it is transcendental. So basically, the entire idea of ultimately leading Arjun or to all categories of people who are reading the Bhagavad Gita, leading everyone to Krishna is Krishna's goal. It is his opinion and not the opinion of any other commentator or any other professor, right? And this is the ultimate permanent solution that the Lord is giving us. And bhakti is the only transcendental practice. No other practice can elevate one to transcendence. And this is further stated in 18th chapters, 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. For example, verse number 66 Let's go one by one. 55, 57, 66. भक्त्या मामपि जानाति यावन्यश्चास्मि तत्त्वतः ततो मां तत्त्वतो ज्ञात्वा विशते तद अनंतरम. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Master of God, only by devotional service, and one is in full consciousness of me. By such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. This is one verse. Then go to 57. चेतसा सर्वकर्माणि मयि संन्यासमत्पर बुद्धि योगम पाश्रित्य मच्चित्त सततम भव. In all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be full conscious of me. So everything is meant to be make us dependent on the Supreme. And then verse number 66, which is Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mahamekam Sharanam Vraja. And then 15.15, which is the verse of very popular verse. Sarvasya chani videsh anivishto mata smriti jnanam aponam cha videsha sarvar vedya vedantikrit vedavid eva chaham. Right? So everything is connected to bhakti ultimately. This is what Krishna is trying to establish. So with this, yeah, we can conclude the class. And now if there are any questions or comments, then devotees can ask.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for a very, very important class today. Very important. I wanted to ask you, Prabhuji, is the level of surrender different in different yogas?
Level of
Surrender. I know it's very individualistic, but
no,
generally.
What you mentioned?
I meant it is individual, generally level of surrender, but does it generally vary in Jnana Yoga to Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga?
Okay. So you are asking the level of surrender towards Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji.
All these different levels, paths. Okay, yeah. See, Krishna already says that the ascetic is higher than the empiricist, and the empiricist is higher than the fruitive worker. So this we can clearly understand, because generally whoever is a fruitive worker, they are more attached to the material world, because they rely on the material world as their means to uh, fulfill their desires, right? Because they are fruitive workers, so they have some expectation, they are attached to the results, and once they are attached to the result, it means that they want to be in the material world. So that's why they are inferior compared to the empiricist. Now, empiricist is, technically speaking, Gyanis. So Gyanis come to the realization or level of understanding that ultimately everything is, we are all part and parcel of the Supreme. And I mean, of course, if there are Gyanis who think that we are all one with the Brahman, that's a different thing. But at least they have the understanding that we are spiritual entities. We are not material beings, and we should not be attached. So they renounce things, and they are in the search of absolute truth. That's why Krishna also says that amongst all the Artharthi Jnani and Jigyasu, the Jnani is the most advanced, because Jnani is the one who can actually come closer to the devotional service of the Lord. And that's why he says that Jnani is the best. And then coming to the ascetic, which is basically represented by Dhyana Yogis. So they are the ones they actually implement the process of Jnana in their process of meditation, because they start focusing their mind, intelligence, everything, and they control the senses in order to attain the Supreme. So like that. So this is the hierarchy, level of understanding. So it's like Dhyana Yogis are more closer to rendering devotional service to the Lord. Of course, because bhakti is independent, so anyone can take up the path. It's not necessary that the karmis will take after a long time, or they will be the last one to take unless and until they come to the path of jnana or dhyan, then only they will become devotees. No, anyone at any stage of life can become devotees of the Lord. They just have to channelize everything in the service of Lord. And that's why Krishna has also established the path of karma, action in Krishna consciousness. Right? So this is how we can channelize. And of course, it also shows that bhakti is independent to bestow results to anyone. It is not dependent on any particular path. So the devotee's mercy can bestow bhakti to anyone at any point of stage. And once the karmi or a jnani accepts bhakti, then they can also become transcendental to the, they can go beyond the Dhyana yogis or ascetics also. So like that.
So generally, Gyan yoga is the toughest, right? Very tough, and very few can do it.
Generally, see, jnanis are the ones who are generally they would like to know about the absolute nature of absolute truth. They are in search of absolute truth, and generally they are after the Upanishads. They want to read knowledge. They want to attain jnana. They will generally read Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra like that, and they will try to understand the absolute truth through the scriptures. So these are the jnanis.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, but when we take up to devotional service, then also we are taking jnana. But that jnana is connected to bhakti. So it's all transcendental in nature. Like for example, the entire science of Krishna consciousness is explained to us by our acharyas. So that knowledge is very important to us because that is sambandh jnana. That jnana is the one that will connect us to the Lord, and it will also help us to advance in spiritual life. So that jnana is different from the jnana. So here jnanis are the ones who are searching for the absolute truth, and they can be impersonalists also, they can Mayavadis also, they can be some other category of philosophers also, speculators also, like that. But the jnana which is attained by the devotees, it's all different. It's connected to bhakti.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay, any other question or comment?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for a nice class. It was good overview of the Bhagavad Gita this morning. I don't have any question, Prabhu, but it was good to review the important verses. Yes, please.
Yeah. This is actually very important that devotees, they can, whenever there is a question from the outside world or some kind of argument, then they can directly state from the Bhagavad Gita the verses which are straightforward, direct. Like it's not, I mean, of course, some verses Prabhupada has done that kind of translation, but ultimately, see, the goal is that Krishna has a purpose in his mind, and the purpose is that he is inspiring Arjun to render devotional service to him, which basically means that he is a devotee already, but he wants to surrender to his instructions. So what is that? It is basically, ultimately, it is bhakti, because you cannot surrender, you would not like to surrender to someone unless you have love for that person. So Krishna is trying to extract that love from Arjun, and that is doing by providing knowledge, right? So that is actually the ultimate purpose of the Lord. So sometimes, we have some purpose, like for example, uh, the marathon is going on. So we emphasize a lot on book distribution. And then you'll see that in different temples, different speakers will come and they will inspire you for book distribution marathon. They will say indirectly you can help, because the ultimate purpose is one only. Finally, you have to distribute Prabhupada's books somehow or the other. So because people are not able to do it, they are not able to follow the path directly, and they are at a different consciousness level. That's why you uplift them gradually, elevate them. And this is the reason Krishna is talking about all these other paths. But his goal is that everyone should be able to connect wherever, whichever path they are, even if there is a karmi, jnani or jnani yogi, who is at a particular path and is a particular stage of that path. Krishna even wants that person to come to him, to connect to him, to render service to him. And that's why you see that in every chapter of the Gita, he's linking, either he's using the word bhakti, either he's using the word mam, so that ultimately any path you can link to the Lord, or you can serve the Lord. And that way, Krishna is also giving some kind of concession. Although you may not be qualified to render bhakti directly, or you may not be at that stage, but if you link up your so-called desires or your inclinations and channelize in the service of Lord, then you not only attain freedom from those reactions, but you also attain devotional service to the Lord. So it's a sukriti that will pile up. It will accumulate over a period of time. And that's the reason Prabhupada also has done the same thing. Because Prabhupada has understood what is Krishna's ultimate purpose. So that purpose he has also mentioned in different sections. Like, just like the Bhagavatam also, you'll see that bhakti is spoken not just in the end, but right in the beginning, middle, and end. All these three places, Bhagavatam talks about bhakti continuously. So similarly, the Lord he's also very generous. He's also very broad-minded, and he's accommodative also. Any person can come to him, can approach, and whatever inclinations they have, they can connect to the Lord. But at the same time, they also get the ultimate result. So any father who is concerned for their children's welfare, he's not so interested in giving some temporary benefit to them. He ultimately wants that the children should get the ultimate result, the highest type of happiness and award. But if the child does not want it, then he will trick the child to give some kind of reward or result that he is more attached to, like that. So this is what Prabhupada also does. So like that, we can clearly see how there are direct verses in the Bhagavad Gita, and the reason for Prabhupada talking about Bhakti Yoga and linking up every yoga with Bhakti Yoga.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. And Prabhu, how many verses were there in this total that you covered?
I think more than 20 verses, around 25 to 30 verses probably.
Or 25, 30. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I have shared on the screen. Whenever you want to refer, you can like to take down all these verses. You can just go through the class once again, and then,
yes,
like you can create some 3 sections: Karma, Jnana, Dhyana.
right.
Write verses for all these sections, and that way you can do it.
And these are taken from, you mentioned there's a Maharaj Shivram.
Yeah, Bhaktivedanta Purpose. So
what is the name of the book, Prabhu?
Huh?
What is the name of that book?
Bhaktivedanta Purpose.
Oh, Bhaktivedanta Purpose. Okay.
Yeah. I think somehow this book is probably not available online, or maybe it is available, but it is very expensive. So because I remember that when we had our yatra in Mayapur in November, that time Shivram Maharaj's disciples, they had come up with this bookstall, and they had the Bhaktivedanta Purpose book also, but I think it was quite expensive. Or maybe Maharaj has stopped publishing. I don't remember if Bhaktivedanta Purpose was there. At least they had the Damodar Janni and Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani. Yeah, I think the Bhaktivedanta Purpose, I don't think it was there. Maybe it is in Amazon. I'm not sure about that. Or maybe it is available in hard copy, but it is very expensive. Yeah, but
okay.
Maharaj himself, then, because when we had gone to Mayapur, we got a chance to meet Shivram Maharaj personally in his room in Mayapur. And I spoke to Maharaj, and I was appreciating his work and everything. And Maharaj spoke to me, he told me, honestly, he was revealing his mind. He was saying that actually, Bhaktivedanta Purpose is actually, it has become very technical. And many devotees, they are not finding it so easy to understand the flow of the entire thing. So I said, Maharaj, that, I think I could follow it, because then Maharaj said, because you are an engineer. I'm also an engineer. And because you are an engineer, you can follow it. But otherwise, it was a bit complex. Actually, I think in order to understand the flow of the entire book, it is also very necessary to read it a couple of times. I mean, you get an idea, you get the understanding, what Maharaj is trying to do, how he's trying to refute. But at the same time, you can, any book that you don't understand, you need to read it a couple of times. Then you get more.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a easy way. Like it's a combination of what Maharaj has done, and I mean there are certain other aspects also that he has proved in the book how Krishna is considered to be the supreme. Like someone may say that, well, okay, Krishna is speaking Bhagavad Gita, but then how is Krishna supreme? There may be other demigods also who may be supreme. So how is Krishna supreme? Then how do you really differentiate with Brahman and Krishna? Is there any difference? So all these things have been addressed by Maharaj in the book. And also, like how these different stages, different yoga practices, they lead up to Bhakti Yoga. It's a ladder that also is described in detail in his book, but we are not going to go through it in detail now. Yeah, so very, very important. Somehow, if you are able to go through it, then that will be the best thing. But yeah, this is just a synopsis of what Maharaj has presented. Okay, all right. Any other question or comment?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dhanavad Pranam. Thank you so much for this excellent class and declaring the key shlokas, some of the key shlokas from Bhagavad Gita. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Explaining very nicely. Hare Krishna.
All right. Yeah, I truly apologize because somehow today there was some issue with the Wi-Fi, and I hope that there was not much inconvenience or interruption in between. I think once I connected to the mobile data, then it went very smoothly, right? Was there any break or anything, any interruption in between when we were like when we went ahead with the mobile data?
Hare Krishna.
No, Prabhuji, everything was very good afterwards.
Okay, yeah, then it's good. Because yeah, I mean, sharing on screen was very important today to show all these verses. And one thing you have also seen very clearly yourself. It's a very straightforward direct verse. Like it's there is a mention of my mom. All these direct words by Krishna himself. So that discriminates, and we can clearly understand that he's not referring to Brahman. He's actually referring to himself, like that. So that's why it was important to show you the verses directly. Okay, all right. So thank you all the devotees for joining in. Thank you for giving the opportunity to serve on the very auspicious day of Safal Ekadashi. Dhanavad pranam to each and everyone. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhurvaibhaccha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo.
Thank you, Jai. Namaste. Thakur ki Jai.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki Jai. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, भगवद गीता की जय, प्रेम रस प्रभु की जय।
Jai.
जी हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna.
Hare
एकादशी महोत्सव की जय।